Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I am Chudiben Namdi. Here you will learn how to fetch data from the server using SwiftUI. Now let's begin. Here I've already created the project fetch underscore photos. So we have our content view file here. Now you see in the very first code we are importing SwiftUI. So this will load all the data relating to the SwiftUI framework for us to use. Now we see here struct content view, uh, which is a substructure from the protocol view. So whenever you want to define a view, it must be a structure, then followed by the name of the view, and then semicolon, and then the view protocol. Looking inside it, we have this var body computed property. Inside this var body is where we will now add all our UI elements and they will appear in our preview. Then the last code is just the preview and we are rendering the content view. So with this code, we are having the preview on our right hand side. Now let's begin. So we are trying to load this data from this URL photos. We are trying to load this photo and you see it returns an array of elements that has album id, title, url and thumbnail url. So we'll see how we'll load this in our iPhone and then display all the data here. So first thing first, we need to represent a section of a particular element in this array being returned here. So this will call it a photo element and we'll have to represent the ID, title, URL and thumbnail URL. So we'll leave out the album ID because we will not be using it. So first, let's see how we can construct a structure of a single photo. Now we'll come here. To construct a structure, we use the struct keyword, then followed by the name of the keyword of the structure. Then braces open, braces close. Now, because you are trying to render this element, this array of photos in our view, we need to make this codable so that we can be able to fetch the JSON of it, decode or either encode or decode this to a JSON so that we can be able to loop through it and render it in our iPhone. So to do that, it must define or be a substructure from the codable protocol. Codable protocol. Now let's look at the codable protocol definition. So you can see a type that can convert itself into and out of an external representation. Codable is a type alias for the encodable and the decodable protocols. When you use decodable as a type or a generic constraint, it matches any type that conforms to both protocols. So you can see it's a type alias codable that conforms to both decodable and also encodable. So if you move upward, you will see all about the decodable and encodable. You see encodable, a type that can encode itself, and why decodable is a type that can decode itself. So this is majorly used using the JSON decoder and encoder. We will see it as we go on in this tutorial. Now, the next thing we have to define here is this our photo needs to be an identifiable. And an identifiable means that this photo must have an ID. Also, let's look at this identifiable protocol. So you see, it's just an object identifier which states that a class type whose instances hold the value of an entity with stable identity. So it must have an ID property that has a unique identity. You can see it here, var ID, that has a unique identity. So this is we are doing this, we are making this photo to be a sub protocol from this identifiable so that SwiftUI can be able to have unique identity for each photos in our array that we are returning, so that it can have unique identity, and whenever we are editing or deleting each photo in the list, then SwiftUI can be able to record the one we are deleting and make its update without any data corruption. Then first, we need to define an ID here since it's an identifiable. We have an ID here, so it will be an int. You will see this will go away. So it goes away. So whenever you make your structure to be a sub protocol from the identifiable protocol, it must have an ID property inside it. Now let's add the rest of the properties. Now let's add title, var title string. So this is how you add properties to a struct in Swift. You use the var keyword followed by the property variable name and then the data type. So we're adding URL. We'll come down here and say the same thing, URL. So it's a string. We'll add string. Then the last thumbnail URL, we copy it. Come here and say var thumbnail URL, which will be a string. So we are done with our structure photo. Now let's write a function we'll use to fetch this data from this URL. First, let's copy this. Then we'll come here, we'll define a function. You see, you can either define a function inside this content view or outside of it. The content view will still see it, but let's define it inside here. So to define a function, we use the func keyword and followed by the name of the function. Let's call it fetch photos. Now we are not passing anything inside it, and the function will be an async, and also it throws. Now let me explain this. The func keyword denotes to Swift that we are creating a function. Now this is the name of the function. This is the brackets. Inside here is where we will state the parameters that this photo will receive. So for now, we are not passing any parameters inside it. So it will be an empty function. Now, because this fetch photo will be an async function, it will have an async code inside it. We defined async here, just like we have async and await in JavaScript. If you are coming from the JavaScript world, now that's why we have the async here. Then throws means that we are telling Swift that this function might throw an error or it might succeed. So this is what this throws keyword does. Now we have to define what the function returns, if we have any. So we need to return an array of a photo. So this symbol denotes what it will return, followed by the type of data it returns. So it will return an array of this. To state that here, we need to make an array like this. Then inside it, we'll now type our photo. So this tells Swift that this function will return an array of a photo. Then let's now write the body of the function. So inside this body of the function is where we will now write our code that will fetch this data from this URL. First, we define the URL using the URL constructor. Then we'll pass string to it. So inside here is where we'll now pass our URL that we copied. So we'll paste it here, and that's it. So you see, this is an optional value. This is an optional value. Now we go down here is where we now make our URL request to the server. Now to make a URL request to server in Swift, we use the URL session protocol. So say URL session dot shared dot data. Now you see we have so many forms of data. So you see we're going to use this one, data from. We'll pass in our URL inside it. Now you see that it's an async keyword and it throws. So here we'll now pass our URL. Now we still have an error. Let's check our errors. Value of optional type must be unwrapped. So we need to unwrap this value because, like I told you before, this URL is an optional value because this returns an optional value. So to unwrap this, we need to use the exclamation mark in front of it. Now, because this data is an async and it throws, it's an async, so we need to call it using the await keyword. Then, since also that it throws, we will use the try keyword. Now, this try keyword with the question mark denotes that if this function call fails, then it should just fail silently and then return nil. So without crashing the execution at all. That's the function of this try with the exclamation, sorry, question mark. Then this data returns a tuple, and a tuple is just in Swift. We use the brackets. And first, let's try going to the definition. Okay, we can open the definition. So you see data convenience method to load data using a URL creates and resumes a URL session data tags internally. So we can see its structure here from the URL. Okay, then the delegate is optional, so we are not passing delegate to it. And you see async throws. So that's why we are using the await and try, because it's an async function and throws function, and then returns a tuple. So you see it returns data and a URL response. So you see it returns a tuple, so a data. So we need to extract the data and the response here. Let's see if our error goes away. So we still have an error. It says cannot convert value of type data. Okay, this tuple to specified type. Okay, I think we have the problem is because we are using this question mark here. So this foundation, sorry, not foundation, this data returns simply this data. So we need to use the traditional try method here. So it works. Now we need now to decode this data to JSON so that we can be able to display it in our application. Then to do that, we use the JSON decoder dot decode. So in this type, we'll pass in the type, the representation we want to decode our data from. So we need to encode our data into a photo. So we do it like this, but photo.self, and then from our data, so we'll pass in this data here. We'll say data. Now let's also look at the document. So you see how I normally jump into the definition. So Xcode has the definition or the docs of the Swift UI and also Swift inside it, so that you can be able to look into the documentation, read what is the structure of the function or anything you want, what it returns, or even the examples, so as to help you out in your code. So you see we have the decode. It says decodes a top level value of the given type from a given JSON representation. So it decodes from this type, from this data into this type that was passed here. So you see this underscore simply tells us that you can pass data to this type without actually specifying type. But this one doesn't, but this from doesn't have this underscore. That's why we must use the from string here. So you see it throws, then therefore we must use try. Then let's go back and returns now. So it returns a value of the requested type. So it returns a value of this. So our requested type is that we want an array of photos. So we will now get our response here. Let's just call it decoded response. Then we will need to return it. Return decoded response. So let's see if our errors will go. Yes, very good. Our errors, all of them have disappeared. So we have a warning. Immutable value response was never used. So we have to replace it with this underscore because it was never used. So we'll remove it, replace it with an underscore. Let's see what happens. So it goes away and our preview is building. Very good. So we have all our function set out. So this function will load the data from this URL using this code, then decode it into an array of photos, and then pass it into this decoded response. You can see the URL, and then will return this decoded response, because here we specified that we are returning an array of photos. That's why we decoded it into this type and then return the response. So that's all you need to do for you to fetch a data from a server in SwiftUI. So the next thing we have to do is to call this function and then display the data returned in our iPhone. So to do that, we have to remove this button. We'll use the list view to display the items. Now, first we need to encase the list view inside a navigation view. Navigation view. Then inside here, we'll say list. We'll pass in photos. And then open braces. Then inside this list, first let's add the navigation title. Let's call it photos. Very good. So it cannot find photos. Very good. So we need to declare a photos here, a photos variable here, private var photos. Then it's an array of photo and also an optional. Now, for us to use it here, we need to pass exclamation mark so as to extract the value of it. Then also, we need to put an if here to make sure that the photos is not nil, because since it's an optional value, it can either have a value or not. So we need to make sure that it has a value before displaying it in this list view. So we encase our list inside our if check. Then we still have an error here, contextual type. Contextual type for closure argument. This expects one argument. This cannot be okay. So since we have this, then we need to grab the first item in the photo in the list and then render it here. Now let's just render text and just say photo dot title. So I hope you understood what we did here. What we did here first, so we added this navigation view because navigation view is just what we use to encase a list if we want to display a navigation title or to add toolbar or anything at all, but it has a new UI UX flavor to this list. We can use this list like this, but we just added this navigation view if you want to navigate from the list when clicking an item in the list to another view. So, but I just use this navigation view so as I can be able to display this navigation title. Now, here, we will now make a check in this photos variable that we have here. Checking if photos is not nil, then we can now display the photos in our list. Now, we are doing this check because here we declared that photos is an optional. So we want to be sure that photos is not nil before we pass it to this list. Now, here we're inside this list, we are passing the photos inside it and then extracting the photos using this exclamation mark, the value inside the optional value using this exclamation mark. And then we now have this closure function here. We now pass to list. Now in this closure function, just like we have in for each and map in JavaScript arrays, now this function that will pass to this list will always give us the current item in the current iteration. So we are now holding the current item in the current iteration in this photo variable. Then we use this in keyword, and then after this in keyword, we will now display or add whatever thing we want to add in this list. So whatever that is here will make up a single item in the list. Whatever that is after this in will make up a single item in this list. So as you can see here in the right, we are not having any data here because first we have not called these fetch photos. Now the question arises that how do we now call these fetch photos? Now we want to call these fetch photos as soon as this content view and this navigation view shows up in our phone. Now, how do we listen to that? We listen to it using the on appear function. Now we pass a closure function to it. Now, passing a closure function to it we will make this function run whenever this navigation view appears. Now, when it appears, we'll want to load these fetch photos. So we'll come here, we'll call these fetch photos. Now, since it's an async function, we must use an await. And also, since it throws, we must use try. Now, because this is an async function and this appear does not have is not an async environment, we must call this in an async environment. To do that, we have to use the tags function. So we have to pass the tags function here, then passing a closure function to it. Then inside this closure function is where we will now call this our fetch photos. So you see the errors have disappeared. Now remember, this fetch photos is returning a response. So we'll catch the response and attach and assign it to this photo. So simply we do this photos. Then we have an error, cannot assign to property self, it's immutable. So what we need to do is we need to convert this photo to a state variable, telling it that it can mutate. So to do that, we start with the at keyword or the at symbol, then followed by the state keyword. Now our preview is building. So you see we have our photos, then we have all the title of each photos here. So you can see this one, Akuzamus Beta. So you see it, this title, you see it is this one here that we are seeing here, and to the last. So you see what happens when we scroll, the photos disappears and comes up here. So that's what you get when you use this navigation view and also use this navigation title photos. Now, very good. Let's display the image. Remember, we are displaying this, we have this thumbnail URL image here. So let's display it using the async image. So we here write async image. You see, we can pass in the URL. So we'll come here, pass in the URL of the thumbnail, photo thumbnail. So we have an error here. What does it say? It cannot convert value of type string to expected argument type URL. Okay, we cannot just pass string, it's an URL. So we'll convert it to a URL. You remember like what we did here? So we'll do the same here. We'll pass in a URL, then string. Now we have syntax error. Cannot convert value type to expected type CG float. Okay, sorry, we need to close it, and then it builds. Voila, we have our image here. Now we can set the width. Let's say width infinity, and then set the height to, let me say, to just 160. Okay, you see our height is just set to 160. Okay, let's look at the docs of this async image. Let's look at SwiftUI loaded. So you see, okay, you can call URL, Then okay, so you see we can also add a placeholder. So this placeholder is used when our image is being loaded. Then it displays this until the image has been loaded from this URL. Then it removes this placeholder and renders the image loaded in place of it. So you can see it in it. We have the URL scale already set to 1. So we have the content. So now this content is a closure that takes the loaded image as an input and returns the view to show. You can return the image directly or modify it as needed before returning it. Okay, so let's add a placeholder. You can see that returns the view to show until the loading operation completes successfully. So now let's rewrite this to take in closures. Okay, first the image. So we'll come here and say image in. Let's just simply return the image for now. Then also we have a placeholder. Then this placeholder is just the view to display. So let's just display progress view. You see the progress. You saw the progress view turn. Then while it was loading the image, then before the image now loaded. Now here we can then now like add so many properties to our image, because this we are just returning this image. So we can add so many properties to our image. Can make it resizable. So it stretches to the width of it. Very good. And I think that's all we need to do for our image. So you see how we're able to load images from here using SwiftUI and display it in our Apple mobile phone here. So we use the navigation view, the list view, then the async image and the text. We use this text to display the title of the image below it, then the async image to display the image, the thumbnail URL from its URL, and display using this async image here. Then we use this placeholder to load the progress view while waiting for the async image view to load the photo thumbnail URL. Also, like I've explained before, this fetch photos is used to fetch the photos from this URL. So you see we first initialize the URL, passing in our URL string, then made the call using the URL session.shared.data method, passing in the URL, then decode the response and then return it. Then here we use the on appear to call the fetch photos when the navigation view loads for the first time. Then we now use these tags to call the fetch photos, because this tags is an asynchronous environment in which we'll be able to call these fetch photos. You see we use the await keyword because this fetch photos is an async function, and we use the try keyword because it throws. Then it returns a function. We now set it to this photo state variable that we have here. Then use this list like this to load it. Then let's go to the definition of the list. Like I said before, always go to the definition of whatever you are using so as to be very sure and also understand what you are doing. So you see in this list, it takes the selection and then content, the view builder, which is the content. You can see selection a binding to a set that identifies selected rows, content, the content of the list. So you can see whenever you're using a view, the init is what is called whenever we call the view like this. Oh, sorry. So you can see for list so many constructor. So this init is like a constructor if you're coming from other programming languages world. So this init in Swift is the constructor, just like the name init that is called when the structure or the protocol is being initialized. So you see the selection and the content. So now this selection, the content of the list and the body. So now what we have to do Let's add more functionality to this our code. We want a case whereby when we click on this photo, it will then load this URL in another page. Now let's see how that is done. First, let's add the click listener. Now to add the click listener, let me just add it to the async image just for now. We need to use async image. We need to use the on tap gesture. Now inside here is where we'll now add the code that will run when we click on the image. See what we did? We came here and called the on tap gesture. This on tap gesture is just like adding a click listener to a button. So this on tap gesture will be called when this async image is clicked. Now this perform closure function we pass is the function that will be run when this async image is clicked. Now here we need to perform a function. So let's set another variable. Let's call it selected image var selected photo selected photo. So when we click on this image, it should set this selected photo to the current photo which we will grab here. So we'll just come here and say selected photo, pass it to photo. Simple. Then very good. Then let me collapse this and collapse this navigation view. Now let's only show this navigation view when no photo is selected, or quite rather, let's set a different view that will show when we'll click on a photo. So let's come here and say if selected photo is not new. Now we do whatever we want here. Then we'll now wrap this navigation view inside else statement. Very good. So when we click on an image, selected photo gets assigned to a photo. Then this body will rebuild because this selected photo is a state variable. Then when it rebuilds, this if condition will run and will display whatever we have there, while this navigation view, now in between these braces is where we'll now add our view to render our image full screen in our phone. So whenever we click on this image, this selected photo will have a value. So this if condition will pass and will render whatever that is in between these braces, and then this navigation view, this whole view goes away and is replaced by the view in between these braces. Now, so to display, we're going to use the async image, then passing the URL like we've already done before. Then the selected photo, extract the value because selected photo is an optional value. Then before we'll now pass in the URL. So let me make sure everything is running. So now when we click on this navigation view will disappear because this body will render to show this, and this navigation view will no longer be there because once we click on this selected photo takes on the photo of this, or the photo element of this, and then this view will be displayed while this navigation view will go off. So you see, if we click on it, it goes off and we'll see the full image view of our selected photo, the full image. Now, how do we go back from this photo, from this view to this navigation view. Now to do that, we need to add a button here so that when we click on it, it will deselect the selected photo so that this will render to show this navigation view. Now to do that, we'll come here, we'll add h stack, then let's add a spacer. Spacer is just like justify between in CSS. So we add a spacer, then we'll have to add an image, then we'll say system image, then just say system name, then we'll pass in x mark dot circle. We'll have to circle it. Let's wait for it to display. Now you see it, we have it. So the spacer, because this is h stack, so we are making it h stack means to arrange any element inside it in a horizontal format. Now this spacer pushes this image to the end of it. Now this h stack, let's add padding. Padding dot leading bottom. Let's add padding. Now let me add the font of the image dot large title. So let it render. So you see it comes out well. Now we'll need to add a tab gesture on it like we did so in the previous list item. So we'll say on tab gesture perform. So here we will now say selected photo is equals to nil. So it will make selected photo to be nil so that this will no longer pass. This will no longer pass and we'll have this navigation view displayed. So in other words, we have navigated back from this navigation view, from this selected view to the navigation view. So just like what we have in React and Angular, how to change state so as to conditionally render parts of the UI. So this is just conditional rendering, and we're using this if else to conditionally render parts of the UI. Great, let's go on. Now when we click on this, okay, now if we click on this image, it will deselect the selected photo to nil and we'll go back to our navigation view. So we click on it, so you see it deselects it and we'll go back to our navigation view. Very good. So you see, then let's click on this one. Yeah, you see the image and it goes back. Now let's scroll, let's click on this too, image. You see it. Now let's add a text to show the title here and also just show view image here. Let's go on. So what we're going to do is that we'll come here, add text, then say selected photo dot title, then we'll come here. So since we want to display the text here, we'll come here and add the text, because we're adding the text here because this hashtag encloses this image and the spacer. So we'll add it here, we'll add the text here so that it will appear here. We'll have the spacer here and then the image here. So inside this text, we'll now have view image. Now let's add some fonts. Let's add some font. Let's say small system design. Let's say design system design dot rounded. So we have an error here, say missing argument for size in call insert size. Okay, so we'll say dot large title. Okay, so you see our image displayed. Now let's make it bold. So you see how easy it is for us to add properties to our UI elements, and it comes out the way we want it. So you see we have it. See our view image here, our close button, then and our title downwards here. So you see everything works very well. Now you see our code works. It fetches data, displays it, and we're able to view a single image or photo. But the problem we have here is that we have so many code in one file. See, we have this code to view a single photo, and also the code to list all the photos inside one file. We can actually break out this view to another SwiftUI file. Now, to do that, we need to create a new file. We'll go here, go to new file, make sure we select SwiftUI under iOS tab, then click on next, then the name view image view, and make sure the target is selected, then we click on create. Then we have our view image selected with the text initialized. You can see the preview is loading. Then what we'll do is that we'll have to cut this up, then come here and load it. Very good. Then we'll copy the name view image view, then render it here instead of the image. So you see we have reduced the code here to just one. Everything about the view image is being handled inside this view image view Swift file. Now we're still having errors. Let's fix them up. Now you see inside this view image view file, we are still manipulating the selected photo by setting it to nil. So very good. What we are going to do is that we are going to bind this selected photo from the parent view, which is the content view, to its child view, which is the view image view, so that whatever we do in the view image view, it will still affect this content view, so that it will render to conditionally render our view back so as to display this navigation view. So to do that, we need to bind this selected photo here. So what we need to do is that we'll break out this selected photo as a property here, then state that it's an optional photo. Very good. Then what we are going to do next is that we are going to pass in the state selected photo inside it. Like this. So in Swift, whatever that is here outside this body automatically becomes an input you can pass to the view of that file. So as you see, we have the selected photo here. Then it now means that we can actually pass the selected photo there via the selected photo property. Now if we change this to just merely photo, you will see that the content view here will start filling. Let's see, it here will fail because it's no longer seeing selected photo, it will see it's seeing photo. So what we just do, we just have to come here and change it to photo. That's all. So we can now change the selected photo in the file to photo. So very good. Now to bind this photo to this selected photo we have here in the content view, first we have to pass a $sign to it showing binding. Then we'll go to the view image view, then add the notation at binding to it. So you see, add binding to it. The errors are gone here except in the preview. Then in the content view, no more error. With this, we have bound this selected photo to the photo property of this view image view, so that whenever we make um, an update to this, it will reflect to the selected photo in the parent view, which is this content view, and it will render the body view. So this just shows the binding the selected photo to the photo property in the view image view. Now this here is failing because we need to add the photo. So we just need to do something like this. So you just need to do something like this, just for preview sake. URL, then the thumbnail. Do we still have error? Cannot convert bind to expected argument photo. So we'll have to wrap it. So all our error is gone. The preview is still loading, but we'll not wait for that. Let's go to the content view. So you see, we have successfully moved off our view image code to this file, and we are left with just this code here. So you see how we have reduced this code. We can even further reduce this one, but for the sake of this tutorial, let's just do this view image to avoid confusion further on. We can also, like I said before, move this fetch photos to another file, and also this struct into another file, so that we know all our structures are in that place. So for easy maintainability, and also to make our code very readable. Now we see it has displayed here. Now let's test it out to see this is working. Now we click on this. Very good, our view image is working. Then we will close this. We see our preview has crashed. Let's go to the view image. Now let's reopen. Let's go to the view image. I think the problem stems from when we do this and we are first unwrapping this. So we need to check before first unwrapping this that this photo is not null. So that's what is causing the preview crash. So to do that, we're going to use the if let condition. So we use say if let photo. So we have to unwrap the photo, this photo inside this photo variable. Then we'll come here, add this. Then this is a variable. Let's say, let's just call it a non-null photo. Let me just call it non-null photo. This is not a good name, sure. So you can easily use your own name for that, just for the sake of this tutorial. So we need now have to remove this and now use this variable non-null photo here. Now we're not going to use it here because here we're just trying to make this photo here null, so that because it is bound to this counter content view selected photo state variable. So when we set it to null, it will affect this content view and trigger a rule render. So with this, our code is safe and it will work without crashing. So let's go to the content view. Now, okay, it loads, and then when we click on, we'll see everything. Then we'll go back to navigation view. So that's the end of this video. I hope you understood what we did here. Now let me recap. We created the structure photo because it will represent a single element inside an array of photos we are returning from this URL. So we defined it. You see, we are making it to conform to the codable and identifiable protocols. Codable means is that we can encode and decode this photo into any form we want. Identifiable means that it will have a unique identity, which we'll do by defining this ID here. Then we have two states, photos and selected photo. These photos is the photos returned from the server, and this selected photo is just the photo selected when we click on this. Then we have the function fetch photos, async throws and returns an array of photo. We declare a URL, then make a fetch using the URL session.shared.data method, and it returns a tuple. Then we decode the data returned from here using the using decoder.decode, then return the decoded response. So that's all. And then we call these fetch photos in this navigation view whenever it appears, and call it inside this tags async environment, and assign the state variable photos to the fetch photos. Then we'll bind the view image, the selected photo, to the view image to each photo variable here using the at binding annotation, so that whenever we make it to nil, it will trigger a render so that this goes off and we'll see the navigation view. So that's all for this tutorial. Do well to follow me, click the like and share button so that other developers will see this video. Follow me for more content like this, and on the next video we'll see how we can able to download files from the internet and also do all sorts of things using SwiftUI. SwiftUI is very good, and also, like we know, it's a declarative framework in which you just declare whatever it wants, and the SwiftUI then picks it up from there and does everything for you very well. So that's all from there. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video. Bye.